Hey, welcome to the Steel Lodge. Resident Evil 4 Remake was recently unveiled at a Sony event. Because of this, a lot of RE fans have it on the mind, and a lot of players want to play the games for the first time. Now, if you own a Steam Deck, it's a great place to play the remakes of the first 3 games. If you haven't played these games before, I will do a little overview segment in the front of each of the segments, just to give you an idea of what you're in for technically and gameplay-wise, and a little bit of the story too. Let's jump into it. The first remake we're going to be tackling is the remake of the original Resident Evil. This one stays a lot more faithful to the original combat and style of the first game. Here are the settings we're using for the RE Remake. This game was originally made for the GameCube and then ported to other platforms and consoles like the PC, so it's pretty easy to run. Now we're going to roll with Jill here. This game's really good and I would highly recommend you play it if you haven't. I did my first playthrough several months ago and it's a great game. Now before we get to gameplay, I'm going to show you that the pre-recorded video files that this game has work fine. When you first start the game off, you'll get this little intro video that kind of sets up the game, and then pretty soon later on in the game, you encounter a zombie for the first time and there's a pre-recorded clip there. Now the reason I'm doing this is that on ProtonDB, I've seen reports of people having problems with these pre-recorded bits, not playing back correctly or having just color problems. So for me, I didn't have those problems and things worked out totally fine. Maybe Proton has been updated, or maybe later on there are some pre-recorded clips that do have problems. But for me, everything seemed good. On ProtonDB, there do seem to be specific videos that have problems playing back, like the one with Kenneth's videotape, but let me know if you have any problems. Now to the actual gameplay. Resident Evil Remake holds up really well graphically, and there's actually a mod that gives you AI enhanced textures. I'll probably put a video up about that later on how to put it on the Steam Deck. The art style is so solid in this game, and since the backgrounds are pre-rendered, all the geometry budget can be spent on the characters, so they hold up really well now. Regarding performance on the Steam Deck, you can see here we are locked to 60 frames per second, and we basically maintain that the entire time with no problems. You can see there's a minor frame time spike, but you get them here and there, they're not really noticeable at all. Now if you want to get better battery life for this game, drop your GPU clock and lock it in the in-game settings to 30 FPS. You can also drop your Steam Deck's TDP. This game should have no problem locking those settings, and you should be able to get a very long play session using that. Now if you haven't played this game before, when you open doors, there's a little cutscene every single time that takes about a couple seconds. There is a mod on the PC that can remove this, but honestly I kind of like it. When you're entering a new room, it really builds the dread of you entering it and not knowing what's in there. I'll let a couple more minutes play out here, but if you want to, just go ahead and skip on to the Resident Evil 2 Remake part of the video.
A dining room. I think you'd better take a look at this.
What is it?
Blood. Jill, see if you can find any other clues. I'll be examining this. Let's just hope it's not Chris's. What is it?
Look out! It's a monster!
Let me take care of it! What the hell is this thing?
I found Kenneth killed by this thing. Let's report this to Wesker.
Now we have the RE2 Remake. This is another fantastic game that I highly recommend you play. This one uses the RE engine. Now the RE engine is really scalable, so if you drop all the settings down, you get great performance, and if you dial them up, you can get really good visuals. Other games that use this engine are games like Monster Hunter Rise, or the other RE games like RE Village and RE3 Remake. This game modernizes the playstyle of the original, and it's a lot more like a regular third-person shooter with survival elements. Settings-wise for RE2 Remake, we're using DX11 here. The game also has a DX12, but this is all going through a compatibility layer. And for the settings, I just used the balance preset on the Steam Deck. Now you could probably turn this up because the frame rate we're going to get here is pretty solid. Now we're just going to go walk up to the gate here and there'll be a cutscene. This is just from the beginning of the second run of the game using Leon. Now cutscenes in RE Engine games can be more demanding. I think they use higher resolution assets when you go in for the cutscenes. A good example of this is a game like Devil May Cry 5, where the most demanding parts of the game are the in-engine cutscenes. So here we're above 60 FPS while we're running up to the door, or right around it for the most part. Now here's one of those in-engine cutscenes. Here the performance is really good though. We actually jumped in frame rate and we're hovering above 60 FPS for the most part. I'll jump ahead in the cutscene here to show you the lowest frame rate recording we get here. It's around 53 FPS, and that's when this explosion happens. Now we'll jump ahead to some gameplay segments with Leon actually walking around the police station. You spend a lot of your time in this game in this police station, so this gameplay segment should give you a pretty good representation of the average performance you're going to get in the game overall. I haven't really seen the frame rate drop below 50 FPS, so my suggestion if you want a high frame rate is maybe drop the settings a little bit more and then lock it to 60 if you really want to make sure you nail 60 FPS all the time, or just set the frame rate cap on your Steam Deck to 50 FPS and you'll get a little bit better battery life there, and honestly the performance wise it's going to be pretty similar to 60 FPS, so I think it's a pretty good medium. If you really want to get better battery life, I would lock it to 40 FPS and you could probably even turn your settings up a bit, because that's just going to lower the CPU usage, which is really eating the battery life on the Steam Deck. Performance-wise, in some of these areas, it's a lot less demanding. For instance, in this bathroom, there's less to draw. It's a smaller space and not a lot of lighting's going on here. So you notice our frame rate's up in the 80s or high 70s. But when we walk through this hallway that's just outside, there's a lot of lighting going on and effects. This will cause our frame rate to drop to the mid-50s. I'll just let the rest of this gameplay play out, and then when you're done with it, go ahead and skip to the RE3 Remake part of this video. Moving on to the RE3 Remake, this game is the most action-focused out of all the games we're covering today, and it's also the least well-regarded out of the remakes that I've covered here. I still enjoy this game quite a bit, but it's not as good as the other two. This game did receive some flack from longtime fans because it cut some content from the original RE3. I never played that game, so I can't really comment on that. This game was made about a year after the RE2 Remake, and it also uses the RE engine. But here I'll use the DX12 version instead. Obviously this is still going through a compatibility layer. Here I'm using a different preset, using the graphics preference 1, but I'm going to go ahead and drop the shadow quality from max to high. This will help us not hit VRAM issues. Once again, we open with a pre-recorded video. There are no playback issues from this or any of the other ones I encountered in the game on the Steam Deck when I played through it. Graphically, this game is very similar to the RE2 Remake since it was made so close in time and using the same engine. The performance we see here is also pretty similar to what we see in the RE2 Remake. There are going to be some scenes later on where we do get lower numbers, like in the mid-40s, but we are using a higher graphics preset here, and I'm using DX12 here instead of DX11 like I was using in the RE2 Remake. So take that into account. This game's a bit more linear than RE2 Remake. It does open up a bit later on, but during the beginning here, there was a lot of in-engine cutscenes and pretty narrow gameplay bits to get started with. There's a pretty awesome escape sequence from Nemesis who's going to come through this wall in a second, but I'll let that play out and you can check out the frame rate. And then we'll skip ahead to a little bit later where there's more zombies on the screen and our frame rate is going to drop a bit there. Jumping ahead a bit here, we're out on the streets, and this is probably more representative of the overall performance you're going to get for a lot of the game, because you will be wandering the streets of the city quite a bit. Now here we're hovering in the low 50s, and pretty soon we will go into the 40s. So my recommendation is if you're using this graphics preset, limit the frame rate to 40 FPS, but if you want higher frame rate, maybe cap it to 50. If you really want to push for 60, you're going to need to drop the settings quite a bit. Now I'm just going to let the rest of this gameplay go ahead and play out, and you can enjoy it.
It's like Arclay on steroids. Hey! Hey, wait! Down here! Damn it!
I thought I'd be dreaming. How could this many people be infected? Brad! Here they come!
In here!
There's so many.
Door behind you, go!
Don't think about it.
Overall, these games run really good on the Steam Deck, and it's awesome to have them on the go. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, I'll probably be checking out Resident Evil 1 Remake and putting some mods on there on the Steam Deck and seeing if I can get it working. I also saw that Proton got an update on the Steam Deck, but you have to opt to the beta. If you do that, it looks like games like Resident Evil Revelation 2 should work, because before that was having problems. Obviously, there's other games like Resident Evil 7 and RE Village. I think those games should work pretty good on the Steam Deck. I haven't checked them out yet, but let me know if you want me to check them out. I think Resident Evil 5 also works on the Steam Deck, because that actually has some Windows Live code that I think got disabled for the Steam Deck, so it runs on there, but I'm not totally sure. If you want Resident Evil 4, I have a video covering how to mod Resident Evil 4 on the Steam Deck and get it running on there, so it works well. Thanks for watching this video.